Hello, everyone. Philip Lee returning with another episode of Civil War Chat. And today's topic is overrating President Ulysses Grant. It is Tuesday, the 19th of April, 2022. Before we get started, I want to show you a picture of my book on Grant. So let me bring it up. There it is. U.S. Grant's Failed Presidency. The book is available for $20 at Amazon. If you'd like an autographed copy, you can get an autographed copy directly from me by email me, Phil, P-H-I-L _Lee, L-E-I-G-H @me.com. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that there now and return to my own notes here on overrating President Ulysses Grant. A recent article in the politically conservative National Review about Ulysses Grant's presidency by historian Allen Guelzo is merely another example of unjustified claims, it's now a mantra, that he was a virtuous champion of Black civil rights. To be sure, Grant promoted Southern Black suffrage, but that was because he knew they were nearly certain to vote for him and his Republican Party. In fact, during his first presidential election in 1868, he received only a minority of white votes, despite his status as a Civil War hero. His popular vote margin of 53% to 47% over New York Governor Seymour resulted entirely from Southern Black votes. That's why the 1868 Republican Party platform demanded universal Black suffrage in the former Confederate states, but left it in the northern states as a states' right, where it had been since the original 1789 Constitution. Although Grant had a seemingly decisive 214 to 80 electoral vote margin, that also hinged upon the ex-slave vote and the voting rights provisions biased against white Southerners. In combination with the disfranchisement of former Confederates in Tennessee, Missouri, and West Virginia, freedmen gave Grant, that is ex-slave, gave Grant 67 of his 214 electoral votes. Without those 67 votes, the 1868 election would have resulted in a tie between General Ulysses Grant and New York Governor Horatio Seymour. Now, Professor Guelzo makes no mention of such points, nor does he mention that the Republican-controlled Congress would not allow Virginia, Mississippi, and Texas to vote in that year of 1868 because those states had not yet installed Republican-controlled vassal regimes that would almost certainly vote Republican. Grant showed, in other words, well, if those states, Virginia, Mississippi, and Texas, had been admitted but not controlled by Republican carpetbaggers and scallywags, they would have probably voted against Grant, which would have put Horatio Seymour in the White House. Grant showed his true colors on Black suffrage in 1875, which was part of his second term, when he repeatedly declined requests by the state's carpetbag governor, Adelbert Ames, son-in-law to General Beast Butler. Anyway, Grant repeatedly declined requests by Adelbert Ames to send troops into Mississippi to, quote, supervise state elections that year. Supervise to me means intimidate white voters under the glitter of federal bayonets. What are you going to do when you go to a polling booth and you see federal bayonets there, looking for you for some reason to deny you the right to that booth? Nonetheless, Grant's true reasons for declining to send troops to Mississippi would not be known by the public for nearly 40 years, when former Republican and Black Mississippi Congressman John Lynch revealed that Grant confessed to him in November 1875 that Ohio politicians told the president that such intervention in Mississippi would likely cause Republicans to lose the autumn Ohio elections. When Grant had intervened a year earlier in Louisiana's elections, Ohio's legislature was alarmed at his tendency to increase federal power over the states and condemned the military, quote, invasion, close quote, of the Pelican State. Basically, Grant traded a Republican victory in Mississippi, get rid of that, let's trade that away, for one in Ohio. Let's take the Ohio victory. Thus, he abandoned Mississippi's mostly Black Republicans in favor of the mostly white Ohio Republicans. Is that, I ask you rhetorically, is that an enlightened presidential leadership on the matter of Black civil rights? It didn't. Guelzo has few comments about the corruption in Grant's administration, and all his praise in his article. He has few comments about the corruption in Grant's administration that would make Hunter Biden look like an amateur. One example concerns the abrupt dismissal of Attorney General Amos Ackerman, a former Confederate who did more than anyone to bring the Ku Klux Klan to heel. Guelzo states that Ackerman lost his post because he stepped on the toes of powerful cabinet members such as State Secretary Hamilton Fish. Guelzo ignores the corrupt influence of the railroad industry, which was a dominant power during the Gilded Age. Land grants to such companies totaled in acreage an amount that was twice the size of the entire state of California. Shortly before resigning, Ackerman confronted the previous Attorney General, Ebenezer Hoar, when the latter was representing a railroad client's land grant claims. Ackerman told Hoar that the client had not completed the work required to qualify for the land grants. Nearly simultaneously, Interior Secretary Columbus Delano complained to President Grant that Ackerman had annoyed railroad moguls Collis Huntington and Jay Gould with rulings unfavorable to their interest. Whether at the urging of Fish, Delano, or Hoar, Grant replaced Ackerman with Oregonian George Williams, who later resigned under bribery accusations, as did Delano. The New York World reported in January 1872, the month after Ackerman was forced to resign, that Williams's appointment to replace him was essentially a triumph for the Pacific Railroads. That's what it was all about. Finally, when the U.S. economy went into depression early in his second term, President Grant schemed to get civilian access to gold rumored to be in the Sioux Indian reservations of South Dakota's Black Hills. He deliberately provoked a war with the tribes that resulted in the slaughter of Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer and his battalion of the 7th Cavalry Regiment at the Battle of the Little Bighorn in June 1876. 3 months later, Grant's Indian agent, George Manypenny, told the Sioux that had remained peacefully on the reservations instead of taking on Custer. He told those peaceful Indians that they would lose their rations, be compelled to give up their firearms, and forcibly move to present-day Oklahoma if they did not give up their rights to the Black Hills. Congress approved the resulting so-called, quote, Manypenny Agreement, close quote, in February 1877. Sioux descendants litigated the settlement well into the 20th century. Finally, in 1980, the United States Supreme Court awarded 8 Sioux tribes $106 million in compensation for, quote, a taking of tribal property, close quote. But the tribes refused it. The money has since remained in escrow. Prior to the Supreme Court ruling in 1980, a lower court judge ruled 5 years earlier in 1975 of quote, President Grant's duplicity, close quote, and the many penny agreement, quote, a more ripe and rank case of dishonorable dealing will never arise in all probability in the history of our country. And actually he said that it will never be found in all probability in our history. And that's a 1975 judge making that ruling on Grant. Well, I mean, there you have it. I mean, the praise that comes to President Grant needs to be debunked. Buy my book, please, and read it and get those facts, because those facts are not out there. Otherwise, why would the National Review publish this nonsense that's just a mantra about Grant being a great civil rights hero? The facts are not getting out there. You have access to them. My book, U.S. Grant's Failed Presidency. You get it, read it, and get those facts. You can help get the facts out there so conservative or politically conservative or even other publications will start realizing that they've been sold a load of snow about Grant. Okay, that's our show for today, and I thank you for watching. I appreciate your interest, and I look forward to seeing you next time.